In Northeast Louisiana, a data center is turning into an electric system. Meta calls the campus Hyperion. It is being built outside the town of Holly Ridge in Richland Parish on land that was once promoted as the Franklin Farm industrial site. The first version was already difficult to picture. 4 million square feet, more than 2,000 acres, $10 billion of announced investment, 3 new gas-fired power plants approved to help serve it. Then the plan grew. Meta now says its investment in the region will exceed $50 billion. The campus is being designed for 5 gigawatts of compute capacity. To support the expansion, Entergy Louisiana has proposed 7 more combined cycle gas units, 3 grid-scale batteries, major transmission construction, nuclear uprates, and other purchase power. 7 more plants is the important phrase. The first 3 have already been approved. The next 7 have not. If the expansion is certified as proposed, the 2 packages would create 10 gas units with more than 7,462 megawatts of nameplate capacity. That is not the campus's measured electricity use, it is not an annual energy figure, and it does not mean all 10 units would run at full output every hour. It is the physical scale of the generation plan being built around one customer and its adjacent projects. Meta and Entergy say that customer will pay the cost and lower bills for everybody else. The contracts are meant to make that true. Whether they do is the part of the project that deserves the closest inspection. Because a power plant can operate for 40 years, a transmission line can last longer. The newest service agreement is measured in decades, but the technology inside the data center may change in months. This is what happens when a regulated power system builds at AI speed, and who owns the risk if the forecast changes. Richland Parish has fewer than 20,000 residents. The landscape is flat, agricultural, and crossed by highways, drainage channels, and long fields. In December 2024, Louisiana announced that Meta would build a $10 billion AI-optimized data center there. The state described it as the largest private capital investment announcement in Louisiana history. Meta projected more than 500 permanent jobs, more than 1,000 indirect jobs, and 5,000 construction workers at the peak. It committed more than $200 million to roads, water, and other local infrastructure. For a rural parish, those numbers are not abstract. By the end of 2025, Meta said Louisiana companies had received $875 million in contracts. By July 2026, it put the figure above $1.6 billion. The company says the expanded campus will eventually support more than 1,000 operational roles. The school district has already felt a change. Meta's July announcement quoted the superintendent saying, "Teacher bonuses rose from $10,000 the previous year to more than $50,000 for some teachers as project-related revenue entered the local system. Those benefits make a simple story about a corporation arriving and a community paying the bill wrong. The parish is receiving work, infrastructure, and a much larger tax base. Local businesses describe new customers. Roads and wastewater systems are being rebuilt around the project. But the campus cannot exist on local infrastructure alone. Its most important connection runs into a statewide electric grid. That is where a private investment becomes a regulated public question. Entergy Louisiana did not begin by asking the grid to absorb the original campus with whatever power was available. In October 2024, the utility filed a plan with the Louisiana Public Service Commission. It proposed 3 combined cycle combustion turbine units totaling 2,262 megawatts, a new 500 kilovolt transmission line, new substations, and upgrades to an existing substation. 2 of the units would be built near the campus at a new Franklin Farms power station. The third would be built elsewhere on Entergy's system. A combined cycle plant uses the fuel twice. A gas turbine spins one generator, its hot exhaust then produces steam for a second turbine, recovering energy that would otherwise leave through the stack. The design is efficient for fossil generation, dispatchable, and able to serve a large steady load. It is also a major long-lived capital asset tied to natural gas supply and fuel prices. The Public Service Commission did not approve the proposal on Entergy's first description alone. The docket went through testimony, discovery, a contested hearing, and settlement negotiations involving commission, staff, Walmart, the Sierra Club, and renewable energy groups. In August 2025, 4 commissioners approved the settlement and 1 voted against it. The order allowed construction, but attached monitoring, prudence review, and customer protection conditions. Those conditions are the foundation of the claim that Meta, rather than ordinary customers, pays for the project. At the approval meeting, commission staff explained the central mechanism in plain terms. Meta's minimum bill was designed to cover 100% of the cost of the 3 generators, including overruns. The plants remain regulated Entergy generation connected to the shared system. The minimum bill creates a contractual floor beneath the revenue expected from the customer that caused the construction. The agreement does more than recover a narrow interconnection charge. Meta says it will fund the full cost of the utility infrastructure required to connect and serve the campus. Entergy says the minimum payments also contribute to system costs that would otherwise be collected from its wider customer base. In theory, that is how one enormous customer can lower everybody else's bill. The first agreement runs for 15 years. Entergy and Meta project that the campus's payments will save other customers about $650 million during that period. They say Meta's contribution will reduce the storm charge paid by other customers by about 10%. Meta also committed $15 million to an Entergy program that assists low-income customers with their bills. The phrase "save customers" needs care. It does not mean Entergy mailed every household a share of $650 million. It means bills are projected to be lower than they would have been under the utility's forecast because a new customer contributes revenue toward costs spread across the system. That forecast depends on the customer arriving, taking service, and making the required payments. The approved structure includes a Meta parent guarantee behind the project company. Entergy told regulators that the guarantee survived a later financing transaction and that the subsidiary could disappear, while Meta remained responsible for the obligations. Contract protection answers who is supposed to pay. Regulation determines whether the assets were prudent, how costs are classified, which system benefits are shared, and what happens when a contract and a power plant do not have the same useful life. That distinction becomes much larger in the second proposal. Before the expansion power case arrived, Meta changed how the campus itself would be financed. In October 2025, Meta and funds managed by Blue Owl Capital formed a joint venture to develop and own Hyperion. The venture described approximately $27 billion of development costs for the buildings and long-lived power, cooling, and connectivity infrastructure on the campus. Blue Owl's funds took an 80% interest. Meta retained 20%. Blue Owl contributed about $7 billion in cash. Meta contributed land and construction work already in progress, then received a distribution of about $3 billion from the venture. When construction is complete, Meta will lease the facilities back. The initial leases run 4 years, with extension options. A capped residual value guarantee covers the first 16 years of operation under specified conditions if a lease ends or is not renewed. Meta did not sell the project and walk away. It remains the operator, construction manager, tenant, minority, owner, and guarantor of defined residual value. The structure brings outside capital into a campus whose future technology requirements are difficult to predict. After questions were raised, Entergy told the commission that the Blue Owl transaction had not changed the first electric service agreement or Meta's parent guarantee. The approved deal, the utility said, remained the deal. But the financing reveals a useful feature of AI infrastructure. The computers may become obsolete quickly. The concrete shell, cooling plant, substations, transmission lines, and generators do not. The physical assets are therefore divided among different owners, contracts, and regulatory systems. Each one handles technological uncertainty in a different way. In March 2026, Entergy opened a new case at the Louisiana Public Service Commission. The customer in the public order is called eVest. The commission describes it as a large hyperscale data center proposed beside the project already being developed by Laidley, the entity associated with the first Meta campus agreement. The new application is docket U37882. Its scale is larger than the entire first package. Entergy's public investor summary lists 7 combined cycle units with more than 5,200 megawatts of capacity and an estimated investment of $12.9 billion. Transmission and related facilities add about $1.5 billion. Battery storage adds at least $700 million, with part of the cost still undetermined. That produces a known subtotal of at least $15.1 billion for the expansion power package before the remaining battery amount. The agreement also creates a path for the customer to subscribe to as much as 2,500 megawatts of renewable resources under an existing Entergy tariff. It includes arrangements involving planned or potential nuclear uprates and other purchased power. Meta's July description is simpler: 7 new gas-fueled plants, 3 grid-scale batteries, nuclear uprates, and purchased power. The 7 plants are still not approved. The Commission's April order dealt with procedure. It told the administrative division to build a record on an accelerated schedule with a target decision in December 2026. The docket remains open. The customer wants power within a few years. A combined cycle plant, high voltage line, or nuclear upgrade must pass engineering, construction, and regulatory review before it can serve a rack of computers. AI companies can order the next generation of chips before a utility has finished litigating the first generation of power infrastructure. 5 gigawatts of compute capacity does not tell us exactly how much electricity Hyperion will draw in every hour. The public figure describes the intended scale of computing infrastructure, not a completed meter record, but the engineering problem is clear. AI training clusters pack large numbers of accelerators into buildings designed to keep them continuously fed, connected, and cooled. Each rack turns electricity into computation and heat. The cooling system moves that heat away. Pumps, fans, networking equipment, storage, lighting, security, and power conditioning add more load around the processors. Renewable contracts can add low-carbon energy to the system over a year. They do not guarantee that the sun is shining or the wind is strong in the same hour a training run needs power. Batteries can shift energy and stabilize short disturbances, but their duration and stored energy are finite. Entergy therefore proposes a portfolio rather than one source. Gas units that can be dispatched, batteries that respond quickly, nuclear uprates that increase steady output, renewable subscriptions, purchased power, and high-voltage connections that move energy across the system. The portfolio can be more reliable than a dedicated island, but it spreads the campus's physical relationship across the Entergy network. Once a transmission reinforcement or generator serves the shared grid, engineers can identify what it does. Accounting for exactly which customer caused every future upgrade becomes harder. That problem appeared in the Commission's Large Load Technical Conference. Participants agreed that a plant built beside one customer is easy to connect conceptually. Later system reinforcement, farther from the campus and serving many loads, is more difficult to assign. Meta says the newer agreement follows the same principle as the first one. The company pays the full costs of its energy, water, and related infrastructure, so consumers do not. It projects more than $2 billion of customer savings over 20 years, on top of the $650 million associated with the first agreement. Entergy combines the claims and describes at least $2.65 billion of benefits. It says Meta will pay for grid maintenance and upgrades that would otherwise fall to residential and small business customers. It also argues that Louisiana needed more capacity before Meta arrived. The utility points to its 2023 Integrated Resource Plan, which projected capacity deficits beginning in 2027. That planning work started before the public announcement of Hyperion. This is the strongest case for shared infrastructure rather than treating every generator as a private extension cord to the campus. If Entergy already needed replacement capacity, a very large new customer can finance assets that improve the system for everyone. Its steady electricity purchases can spread fixed costs across more sales. New transmission can make the grid less constrained. Modern combined cycle units may displace older, less efficient generation when the system does not need all available plants. Meta will pay a large bill. The question is whether it remains large enough under every important outcome. What if construction exceeds the estimate? What if the campus energizes more slowly? What if gas prices rise? What if a shared asset costs more to operate than expected? What if the contract ends while the plant still has decades of useful life? What if electricity demand elsewhere does not grow enough to absorb the capacity? The first settlement addressed overruns and minimum payments. The second case is still being tested. The projected saving does not remove the need for that review. A mistake inside a $15 billion infrastructure package can be larger than the benefit promised by a smaller agreement. A minimum bill can be designed to recover fixed construction costs. Natural gas introduces another moving part. The fuel is purchased continuously. Its price responds to production, storage, pipelines, weather, exports, and demand from other power stations. A long-lived fleet increases the amount of customer exposure tied to that market. At the April 2026 Commission meeting, opponents of Entergy's accelerated process argued that 7 more plants would deepen Louisiana's dependence on gas and deserved fuller review. They also asked how revenue from Meta would change rates for other customers and whether the public could receive more benefit than the utility had proposed. Those were arguments in an open docket, not final Commission findings. Entergy's response is that the new agreement includes customer protections consistent with or stronger than Louisiana's emerging large load guidelines, and that the resource package is broader than gas alone. A contract can protect fixed costs and still require careful fuel cost design. Batteries, nuclear uprates, and renewable purchases do not change the fact that 7 gas units are the largest new block of capacity. The plants may also provide value beyond Hyperion. That creates the same allocation problem from the other direction. If households benefit from shared reliability, it may be reasonable for them to bear some shared cost. If the assets would not exist at this scale without the data center request, the customer should not receive credit for benefits created by infrastructure it needed anyway. The regulator has to separate those two ideas without knowing the future. While the power case remains open, Richland Parish is already living with the construction boom. Meta says its infrastructure commitment has expanded from more than $200 million to more than $300 million, and now to more than $1 billion across roads, water, and wastewater. Local contractors have received work, restaurants and transport companies report more customers, schools have received grants and new revenue. Louisiana Delta Community College is receiving support for trade, training, and scholarships connected to data center work. The expansion announcement projects more than 1,000 jobs after the campus is operational. That is a large employment increase in a parish of this size, even though it is small beside the construction, workforce, and the capital invested. Louisiana law allows a qualifying data center to avoid state and local sales and use tax on eligible equipment and many development expenditures. The project must meet investment and employment thresholds. The initial agreement can last 20 years with a possible 10-year renewal. The law allows termination and collection if obligations are not met. The exemption is not a cash payment, but it is a public choice to forego tax in exchange for investment, jobs, and future revenue expected elsewhere. For local officials, the comparison is not simply exemption versus full tax. They also consider whether the project would locate in Louisiana without the exemption, and what tax base would exist if the former farm site remained undeveloped. For the public, the useful question is whether the promised employment, infrastructure, and tax revenue are measured against the full value and duration of the incentive. Electricity is the largest visible system around Hyperion, but it is not the only one. Data centers use water directly or indirectly depending on cooling design, climate, and the generation mix that supplies them. Construction also needs water, drainage, wastewater treatment, and dust control. Meta says the Richland campus will restore 100% of its water consumption to connected watersheds through conservation and restoration projects. It has described wetland and water quality work in the Both, Tensas, and Lower Mississippi watersheds. It is also financing wastewater infrastructure that will eventually serve the wider community. The commitment does not mean the campus operates without withdrawing or consuming water. Water restoration is an accounting and ecological intervention. A project may improve irrigation, wetlands, recharge, or water quality elsewhere in a connected watershed. The benefit can be real while the location, timing, and form of the restoration differ from the water used at the campus. The public material reviewed for this film does not provide a completed expanded campus annual consumption figure. The campus is still being built, and the final operating configuration is not yet a meter history. The result is a disclosure gap that should close as the site begins operating. Meta says it will publish water withdrawals and consumption through its sustainability reporting. That will allow the restoration promise to be compared with actual use rather than a design estimate. The same principle applies to electricity savings, jobs, and tax revenue. Forecasts justify decisions. Measurements tell the public whether the bargain worked. Hyperion is not a finished $50 billion object. It is a sequence of agreements, buildings, power, plants, permits, forecasts, and financing structures that are moving at different speeds. The first campus is under construction. Its first 3 gas units are approved and subject to a settlement. The Blue Owl venture finances a defined portion of campus development. The larger 5-gigawatt compute target is announced. The 7 additional plants and their associated infrastructure remain before the Louisiana Public Service Commission. The sequence prevents 2 easy mistakes. The first is saying Louisiana customers are obviously paying for Meta's private power system. The approved agreement contains real minimum bill protection, monitoring, prudence review, and a Meta guarantee. The project is already producing local benefits that would be dishonest to ignore. The second is treating projected savings as proof that every future risk has disappeared. The expansion is larger, the assets are long-lived, the fuel is volatile, and some infrastructure will serve a shared system. Those facts require more than a promise that the customer pays its own bill. Costs caused by the campus should remain with the campus. Shared benefits should be measured before they are credited. Fuel and construction assumptions should be tested under bad outcomes as well as the expected one. The protection should last as long as the public can be left with the asset, and every projected saving should return later as a report comparing the forecast with actual bills. Artificial intelligence may justify infrastructure on a scale that would have sounded absurd 2 years ago. Richland Parish may benefit from hosting it. Entergy's wider grid may benefit from building around it. But speed is not a substitute for risk allocation. If Meta's demand arrives, the contracts hold, and the system benefits appear, Hyperion could become the rare mega project whose largest customer helps lower costs for everybody else. If any of those conditions fail, Louisiana will still have the concrete transmission lines and power plants. The most important part of a $50 billion AI campus is not the number in the announcement. It is the answer written into the contracts to what happens next.